Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to a special episode with Tom Reimer that is not Found Footage Fridays.
Nope, not today. Something different.
Yeah. We've talked about this a little bit on Found Footage Fridays before. Tom is a horror author.
Yep.
I've shown my collection of his books, which I'll put pictures up as we talk. And so we are here to discuss his upcoming release, Odious Ghouls.
Which is crazy to say. It's my fifth book. Which,
yeah, that is crazy.
It's really nuts. But really excited. It's available now. Today is the day. This is the official launch of the book, and you can get it on Amazon. That's where you can get it right now. Unfortunately, nowhere else. But if you come to
Amazon,
if you come to AuthorCon at the end of March, you can get it in person also from me. So
yeah. Well, and I always go to Amazon for books anyway when they're available on Amazon.
Yeah,
so
it's the easiest.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I'll have the link for where to get it. I'll update that. We'll put it in the description for the episode along with everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's walk me through whatever you want to. Let's talk about. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the cover for a second. I'm going to put a picture of the cover right here, in all its glory.
Yeah. Yes,
so you can see the whole thing. That's what's behind us, but this is what it looks like.
So that amazing cover the artwork was hand painted by the well-known author and artist Gemma Moore, Stoker nominated Gemma Moore. This is my second of my books that she's painted the covers for, the other being Malevolent Nevers. The design of the book, meaning the text and the formatting and all that, done by Jessica Moon, who is the co-founder of Shadowspark Publishing, which I should definitely say is where my books, all 5 of them, are published by. So so very grateful for the work that Gemma did and the work that Jess did to make this look awesome, because I think, in my opinion, for me, the cover is really important. When I was a kid, I want people to have sort of the feeling I had when I was a kid, where I feel like my sort of entry into horror was picking like Goosebumps books off of the shelf, and it was the covers. It was the covers. I mean, in those cases, you could actually feel the title, the goosebumps on the title.
Yeah.
But like that made reading scary things cool. And that's not to say my books are for kids. But I think
no, I know what you mean, though.
There's a certain nostalgia there, and I think there's adults that grew up at the same era that I grew up in, and I think I want to grab a book and say that's a badass cover, and I think a lot of other people do too. So that's where I'm going with those. Yeah,
it's beautiful. The watercolors are like, first of all, I'm already a big sucker for anything watercolors. I love watercolor stuff, so it's really cool, especially because so Tom was very kind and I read this early. I got to read this before the cover reveal.
Yes, you did.
So there's a couple of things once you read it that will stick out on the cover where you'll be like, like these little details are so cute. Like they matter. Like I thought that was really neat. It's really pretty. I'm like, I thought it was like, it's definitely an eye catcher. And I think it definitely gets the story. Like, I don't know. It just seems perfect. Like it is really well done.
Bright, it's colorful. You can't not stop and
take a look.
At it. So and I'm like a sucker for like hand painted covers. You know what I mean? Hand drawn covers. I like a lot of the other stuff that I'm seeing out there as well. But just personally for my own books, at least the last 2 were totally hand painted. So really, really excited about how that turned out.
And it's kind of cool too because like I'm like a big believer in supporting indie everything.
Yeah,
And so this kind of accomplishes two things because you're an indie horror author and you're putting that back into the community because Gemma
absolutely.
is an indie horror author as well as a
Absolutely.
creator, a painter and an artist, and like that's really neat that it kind of like, goes full
Absolutely.
circle.
And
Yeah.
she's great. She's great to work with. I'm
Oh
always
yeah.
shocked that there aren't more people who are having her paint their covers because you should be. She's awesome. So
Yeah, and maybe I'll put a couple of pictures of some others that she's done because I have a few of the books that she's done the hand painted covers for,
mhm.
and they're all very unique. I mean, like they're all different, so they all look really good. But
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's painted a lot of her own covers, obviously, for her books. So
yeah, so give like a brief synopsis of what Odious Ghouls is about.
yeah, so I mean, would it make sense if I like read the back cover? I don't.
You can. That's up to you. Whatever you want to do.
I might have if I can. Well, I don't have a book. So interestingly enough, the books you can order them now, but even I don't have one in my hand just yet. Which that's a funny inside thing with the publishing world. So let me just. I would love to read a little bit. I had it ready.
No, you're
Um,
fine. Yeah, I was gonna say because with the even when you do things like so like when my little experience is with the getting of the books after they're ready to rock is
yeah.
like there were people getting copies from Amazon before I got my contributor copies. Like so it's
Yeah.
all very like I don't know, it's very weird.
Well, I'm going to read the back blurb because I think, and I can go off of that, but
That's fine.
this is what it says. We mustn't tempt them. I'm going to start over again. I screwed it up. We mustn't tempt it. We mustn't tempt them. Tabby Fowl knows the legend. Hell, everyone does. As a child, she, the last of the Fowl bloodline, was warned to stay far, far away from Fowl Meadow. She was warned of what would happen if she ever stepped foot into that place of rot again. She promised her grandmother to never go there and had no intention of ever breaking that vow. Until now. As the traveling lamp lights, so must the three hearts, and the blood of the fowl will summon the ancestral ghouls from their centuries-old graves. With her film crew in tow, Tabby returns to Fowl Meadow. She sees dollar signs, and with her family name attached to the project, she thinks, no, she knows, this will be just the ticket she needs to fame and fortune. At the very least, it's what she's managed to convince herself and her team of. Unfortunately, video cameras are no match for a demon's thirst for vengeance. After nearly 200 years of waiting, the odious ghouls have finally been summoned and will once again gild the land in their crimson plague. But that is, and I would define this as really, and it says this on the book too, it's a campy monster fest. It's inspired by like a lot of 80s era monster movies that I grew up with, and the contemporary found footage subgenre, which we talk a lot about,
We
you
do.
and I. So, yeah, it's not. I need to be clear though. It's not found footage, but it's inspired by found footage in that it's more inspired by a lot of the plot lines that you see in a lot of found footage movies, the setup, the film crew that's going to film
Yeah.
some haunted location or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, you often for fame, and then this is what happens. Obviously, bad stuff happens
Yeah.
pretty quickly. Um, so
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think like, I because when I was reading it, it felt very at the very least you would get like that it was like inspired by something related to
yeah,
found footage. But there was things because I mean, like you said, we do talk about it a lot. I watch a lot of found footage. And so immediately when the cameras are mentioned, that's where my head goes automatically.
yeah,
And I thought like those pieces, they made me feel happy in a found footagey kind of way, in
yeah,
the sense that like, I could almost like see this happening in a found footage
yeah,
like style as a movie. Um which I thought is, yeah, it was really well done. Cause I thought like, because we'd had some conversations about the book and things prior to this. So I did have some knowledge about some stuff going into it, but not as far as like the bigger storyline stuff. And, you
Yeah.
know, but anyway, but yeah, I definitely think fans of found footage will like super be pumped about those pieces. It's like kind of like how you talked about like looking at a cover and thinking goosebumps. That's what I feel like is going to be the same feeling when
Yeah.
people read this that are found footage fans. They're going to be like, oh, like I know this. This is going to feel, you know, it's going to feel good.
I feel like those people, those are the people I was writing this for, but also, you know, people who like I remember walking through like a video rental store when I was a kid and
Yeah.
picking the scariest looking
Yep.
monster movies, Ghoulies and Critters and you know,
Yeah.
Tremors and Gremlins and all that sort of
Yep.
generation off the shelf,
Mhm.
and basically bringing home a movie based on the cover alone. But I feel like this has some of that kind of
Yeah.
some of the elements of those movies as well.
So yeah, no, I can see that. And listening to you talk about your inspirations, that makes sense too. Like I could piece it, you
Yeah.
know, together. So where did is there more to the idea of where this came from?
Yes. Yes. There's more. So that's just sort of like the inspiration for the feel
Some
of it, but
pulls from it.
the
Yeah, I
the
gotcha.
story itself um, really came from sort of a reoccurring dream or nightmare. It's cooler if I say nightmare, but
It's cool.
that means I was like scared of it. I wasn't really scared of it when I was having it sort of
Okay.
over and over again. And it was you know, in the book there are some dream sequences,
Yeah.
particularly featuring the main or the protagonist or one of the protagonists,
Yeah.
um, and I sort of like part of this was part of an actual dream that I had multiple times, and I I think one night I woke up and wrote it into like the notes on my phone and
Mhm.
saved it for, you know, when I was ready to write my next book, when I was done with everything for the book that came before this one.
Mhm.
um and it turned into a book. I struggled for a while. I had a few ideas of where I was going next and which book, and this is the one I settled on. But yeah, it features dreams, it features nightmares, and it's based on a nightmare. So it
That's
came
cool.
from one of my nightmares. So yeah, so it's a little personal in that way, I guess.
Yeah. That's not that's cool. I didn't know that much.
Yeah,
That's neat.
yeah,
Yeah, the dream stuff is cool too. Like like it's funny. So like because I've read everything else so far. You
yep,
know, and so this kind of goes into like the next thought, but like it is genuinely different from your
very
other
different.
stories, and
Yeah,
not just because the trilogy is about aliens and this isn't aliens. Like
the feel
it's
of it.
not so much like a I don't know what it is, but it's like it's just different. So
Yeah.
how do you think this is different from your past books?
So the first book, so the Glowing trilogy was the first, the Glowing, and then the Glowing trilogy are the first books I put out. Those three,
Yeah.
definitely, I would classify those. There's, I say, sci-fi horror in the way that,
Yeah.
you know, the Alien movies are lean horror but have a lot of sci-fi elements.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Similarly, it also, though, just those books, the feel of them, it's more YA. It
Yeah.
features teenagers at least as
Yep.
characters. So um,
Yeah.
the second book, Malevolent, or my fourth book, Malevolent Nevers, was more classic, sort of like it had a lot of gothic elements to it.
Yeah.
It was more
Yep.
about a small town with a big secret. Um, so this is my most clear cut horror, I feel like. It's definitely,
Okay.
I would not describe it as like extreme, but there are more explicit
Yep.
scenes,
Yep.
as far as like the gore, I guess. I don't
Gore.
even know if I would say gore, but like
That's what I
there
was
are.
thinking in my head.
Yeah, there's not as much of that in my other books, or it's just
Yeah.
not described as much.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say this is more like Malevolent Nevers is classically like gothic horror. I would not describe Odious Ghouls as gothic horror.
No.
It's more monster horror.
Contemporary monster.
contemporary monster horror.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, it's a little bit different for me. It's darker,
Yep.
definitely
I
darker
agree.
than
Yep.
either of my other books.
Yeah.
Definitely not a light read by any
No. No,
stretch of
I
the
agree.
imagination. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and I will
that's the
say
biggest difference.
too, I think like the only thing that I would say that they really have in common is that like you write very like reading your books is like kind of like watching a movie. Like it
Mhm.
reads like a movie as far as the pace,
Yeah.
which is like I love that. That
Well,
works really well for me.
and
And
that's
this
sort of what
is the same
they're
way.
inspired by different
Right.
genres of film.
That's
So,
like
yeah,
yeah,
I think I like to read things that move at a fast clip. Obviously, we watch a lot of found footage, which we always talk about. They're about an hour and 28 minutes exactly. Like they're short, quick bursts. My chapters are really short and sweet, and
yeah,
hopefully, readers feel like they move because that's
I think they
how
do.
it's intended to be written. Um,
Yeah.
Usually written. I would say one thing you see with all my books to varying degrees would be pretty much every chapter's. I jump back and forth chapter to
Characters.
chapter between perspectives and point
Yep.
of view. So,
Yep.
uh, Malevolent Evers, there's only two
Two.
point POVs. The Glowing is a whole bunch.
It's a bunch.
It's a ton
Yeah.
of people, and obviously spread over 3 books. But Odious Ghouls is two main characters and then a few others,
And then
maybe
some.
3 main characters and then
Yeah.
a few others. So
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely different, but it was fun to kind of go in this direction. Of all my books, it's the one so my wife hasn't read this yet.
Oh,
Interestingly, so my previous work, she would proofread for me.
yeah.
This one, she didn't, and I'm more nervous about her reading this one, just as far as the content,
Oh, yeah.
because she's not a horror fan. So I'm worried she won't like this one as much. We'll find out. I think for a lot of horror fans, that's probably a good thing to hear. Music to your ears. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she's gonna like this one.
You'll have to like tell somebody somewhere what she thinks when she
I
gets
will. I'll
because
let you
I'll be
know.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one is also in Massachusetts,
Yep.
like
It is.
all
Yep.
the others.
All of them. Yeah, they all take place in real locations in
Yeah.
Massachusetts, and I don't know that I intended to. Well, so I guess generally speaking, I don't know that I ever thought I would write multiple books, to be honest.
Hmm.
The first book I wrote, The Glowing, I didn't know was going to become a trilogy, and did. And that book that was 3 books right there that all took place in Massachusetts.
Right.
And then after that, Malevolent Evers, and then Odious Ghouls, I feel that I like writing about places I can picture and that I've been to, and that
Yeah.
I can actually visit. Like some of the coolest things, like when people can visit the sites of like where a movie was filmed, or where a book,
Yeah.
or a town where a fictionalized town might be based on. Well, all of my books, like the towns I name, they're fictionalized versions of those towns. Like the
Sure.
people I talk about are not real people.
Yeah.
There's place names I change, but like the towns themselves exist, and you can
Mhm.
go to them. And there's certain landmarks that exist that I mention in all of my books.
That's cool.
The Glowing takes place on Mount Greylock, which is the tallest peak in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It's pivotal to that series. Malevolent Evers takes place in my hometown, where I live right now. Literally, it's based on my own backyard. But like I'm right now looking, like facing the backyard and the swamp where Malevolent Evers is set.
And is this your backyard from our found footage intro
Yes, yes, it is.
with the creepy
So go check
woods?
that out if you want to see what that looks like. And then Odious Ghouls, it's still in Massachusetts, a little bit further away, but it's a really old community that definitely has some old meadows and pastures that I think, I like to think this were the inspiration for
I
this book.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense anyway. I mean, it's probably easier to visualize if it's somewhere you've been, somewhere you know when
I
you're
mean,
creating.
I'm no Stephen King, but Stephen King said all his books, and I think all of them were set in Maine. Maine,
I
yeah,
think at
most
least
of them.
most of them, right?
Most of them, yeah. So maybe New Hampshire. I mean, New England, but like, yeah, New England, I think. So I like to think I will, keep this going. Why not? There's Massachusetts is really old too.
Yeah.
There are so many cool places that are super creepy. Some of the most haunted places in the world are in this state, including
I didn't know.
there's a really haunted tunnel that's featured in Glow. Actually, of all things, in the Glowing trilogy, the Hoosic Tunnel, which is a real tunnel that is considered
Oh,
one of the most. It's in, if you look at most like haunted locations in Massachusetts, in
that's
the
gonna
United
come up.
States, the Hoosic Tunnel is in most of those. So
Hmm.
I'm always on the hunt for the next spooky place. But it's easier if I can drive past that place and then even visit it. Like especially during Mellow Nevers, I would visit specific locations around town
Yeah.
while I was writing the book, which it's when you have that sort of vivid mental picture in your brain, it gets easier to write it.
Yeah.
I would say one negative about doing that is that sometimes I forget maybe that everybody doesn't know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and everybody can't picture this place. And so I mean, I
Yeah.
have to. That is something that I work on. But yeah, I'm probably going to keep all my books in this state for now, at least.
That's cool. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, wherever your inspiration takes you. I can
yeah,
see that being I think there's a lot of people that do things like that anyway. It's just helpful. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah. Some people write
Um,
write about the South. Some people write about wherever they're from. Yeah,
yeah. So let's talk a minute about what you consider your brand.
my brand. Yeah, my brand. I would say are. I tend to. I would say the way that I think of it is that I want people to know exactly what my books are before they open them up and read them. Like, I don't want people to think my books are one thing and then read them and decide this is not what I was expecting. Like, my
You've
books are
definitely
fun.
accomplished that, I
My books
think.
are meant what was that?
I think you've accomplished that.
Yeah. I mean, like, you look at the cover, you're like, oh, this is going to be fun. And I think for the most part, my books are. Just like I picked
Yeah.
up those VHS tapes it was the video
This
carousel
is
when I was a little kid. And I know. And I was
yeah.
like, this movie's going to be fun. It might be bad. It might be terrible, but it's going to be fun. And I mean, I don't think my books are bad, but I think they're fun. And
Yeah.
you can't I don't, like, I take myself seriously as an author, but I don't take myself seriously as an author, if that makes sense. Meaning, I want to enjoy what I'm writing. I want people to read and enjoy my books.
You take what you do serious, but not so serious that you can't make it fun too.
Right, right. And it's not
Yeah.
doesn't mean my books are necessarily funny. That's not what I mean
No,
either.
yeah. I
Like
think I know what
sometimes
you
you
mean.
just want to watch a bad monster movie, or you just want to watch a B alien invasion, or you just want to watch a found footage movie, and you're not watching it because you're expecting Academy Award nominated
Sure.
performances. You're watching it because you like found footage movies, and that's sort of when people look at my books. Want them to I want them to, enjoy what they're reading, but to
Yeah.
know what they're getting into. And I think most people who read my books, that is what they're getting into, and they know what they're getting into, unless
I
they're my family members or something like that. Yeah,
No, I think you've accomplished that. I think they are. And to your point, like even though it's not necessarily comedic, that some of the stuff that the characters do or say is very funny. Like there's some characters that made me laugh. There's things that made me laugh because they were relatable. I mean,
yeah,
even in this, like there's just things that, come up or that happen and I don't know, it's a break from some of the other heavier stuff, but I think it's like a good mix of the fun and
yeah,
the not so fun. Yeah.
yeah. So like,
Yeah.
I guess that was a long way of saying my brand is like, if my books were in a video rental store, they'd be on the shelf with all the like the B horror movies from like 1983 to 1993, somewhere in that 10 year
Not
span,
10 years.
if that makes sense. Yeah,
It does. Yeah, that
that's my
makes
book.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, so what was it like to market a book like this as an indie author?
Well, this one I'm only getting started because it's just coming out today. But I like the build up was for all of these books and then marketing them is it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
There's not somebody who's going to do it for you if you
Sure.
don't tweet out that picture of your book a couple times a week. It's not going to stick in anybody's brains.
Mhm.
I think the difference between this book and my other like previous works were that all four of those were written during the height of the pandemic or were published
Oh, right.
during the height.
Yeah.
And so like I had no option as far as like in person, conferences or readings or anything like that. So that wasn't even on the table. Whereas now the world's open a lot more
You
and
can
I'm going
do,
to have
yeah.
those sorts of opportunities, and I do. Um, I think, a lot of people feel badly about shouting about their work. And even I do a lot of times. Like, it's not easy
Yeah.
to, tout yourself. But you
No.
have to. As an indie author, you don't have a choice. If you don't,
Yeah.
you won't be seen. Um, and so
Yeah.
hopefully, there are people out there that don't mind seeing what you're talking about on a daily basis. But you
Yeah.
have to be active. You have to make connections with people in the community.
Mhm.
And the horror community isn't just authors. It's
Right.
content creators. It's
Yep.
people who maybe are also interested in films and movies, and
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
so you have to like. It's not just posting and tweeting and
Right.
Instagramming and all that stuff. I would say the one thing that I feel like an old guy and haven't figured out yet would be TikTok. I have not ventured down that route. I have heard good things about the book talk, um, but I feel like it is. It feels out of my element. I don't know if it is. You could tell me, but
I I don't really,
I don't
so
know.
because I have one and I do things like sometimes, but I don't know. I guess for me, like, I don't really get the point because we already have it on other platforms. So it seems
Can't there just
like
be one platform? Like,
I know, right? Well, and I think like I see, so on anybody that I follow on anywhere else, I'll follow on TikTok too. So there's a couple of booktubers that I follow that post, their promotional stuff. But I will be honest with you, in my humble opinion, it is very time consuming to do videos for TikTok because in order to make them appealing, you have to do all these things to make them look cool or funny or whatever.
yeah,
And it's like it's just too it takes a lot of time. And
yeah.
so that's one of the reasons I don't ever do anything with it because I don't have the time for it. I mean, it's easier to make a quick little like, hey, I'm Tom Reimer, my book comes out today. Here's a picture of it and show a picture of it and then post that as a reel than it is to try to go on TikTok, do multiple things, add filters and transitions and all this stuff and it's a lot. So, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so because of that, I would say I'm not the most social media savvy person, but I do well enough. It's been long
Yeah.
enough for me. And I think when I first started out, when my first book was published, I didn't have a website. I didn't have an
Right.
Instagram. Like
Yeah.
it was like just on Twitter and Facebook, and even that then I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm not sure I 100% know what I'm doing even still.
Right.
I think making it up as you go along, but I feel it's really about more than anything. It's like making connections and meeting people,
Yeah.
through these platforms and
It's true.
finding people of similar interests, and then and building. And this is where I'm only starting to see the fruits of my labor, but building a fan dare I say, fan base. I don't even know if I'm at that level where I can call them fans, but there are people who have read my other books and have read all of my other books and are excited that I have another book that's
I'm
coming out.
excited.
And so,
Yeah.
but it's only like now where I'm sort of experiencing that phenomenon. And it's been years of working to get
Yeah.
to even that point, even to have like a handful of people who are, chomping at the bit for this book to come out, which it is.
Yeah. Well, and while we're kind of like talking about like the getting it out there and stuff, when it comes to like doing the indie publishing scene, so more
Yeah.
now we're seeing two things. We're seeing a lot of self-publishing and
Mhm.
a lot of indie publishers that have come up in
Yep.
the last few years that are just, these people that didn't exist before. Like you couldn't just
Yeah.
like do your book yourself. It wasn't, there weren't the resources for it, or you couldn't find somebody that was willing to give your book a shot. Like, and that was really difficult. So what's that been? What do you, I mean, talk about what
Well,
that's kind of been like.
I feel like indie publishing. So like indie, that doesn't just mean people who publish themselves. That is part of it, self-publishing, but also small indie
Small.
presses,
Yep.
small publishers, um, who maybe have just a small collection of authors.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that has been a game changer for authors of all genres, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels to me maybe even more so for the horror writers
Yeah.
as a whole than the horror genre. And maybe that's because like all genres, there are a few big names that you feel like those are the names you always used to see in the bookstores. But
Yep.
uh, in horror, I feel like it might even been more exaggerated and harder
Mm-hmm.
for people who weren't a big name
New
to
voices.
get their work out there because I feel like a lot of traditional publishers were scared of, investing in some of this sort of
Yeah.
content,
Yeah.
thinking it would repel people. And horror, it's by nature more extreme, and I feel like
Yeah.
by going like the indie route,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more of those voices were able to get out there, either because they put themselves out there and found fan bases themselves, or smaller publishers like I am published with aren't as you know they're not as worried about like sort of the same sorts of things a traditional publisher might be,
Sure.
and willing to take more risks, I think, with
Yeah.
underrepresented authors, but also authors whose content might not have risen to the attention or of the interest of a trad publisher. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, everywhere you look, it feels like horror is more indie right now than it is anything else. I mean, obviously Stephen King is still writing, and Joe Hill,
Mm-hmm.
his son, and now
Yeah.
Paul Tremblay is pretty big, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, where's all the diversity in horror? It's all the smaller publishers. It's indie, self-publishing.
Yeah.
Those are where all the new voices are, and it just feels like in the horror community, that's where most of those people are, and it's really, really cool to be a part
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I mean, I think we're even seeing that in film, because I
Oh yeah,
think that like
same
the
thing.
indie community in general, it's like it was like the world woke up one day and realized that they did actually care about horror. And then now you've
Mhm.
got these, you've got things like Shutter and Screambox and other windows like what's the other one? Tubi.
To
And
be
then
fair.
for film, it's kind of the equivalent of like the indie presses for authors. It's like they're giving these indie filmmakers an opportunity to get their stuff to these audiences that might not see it otherwise.
I almost think
Um,
of it, yeah, like the streaming services
yeah,
are sort of like the
yeah,
indie. They're not obviously on the small scale of a lot of indie publishers, but like they're sort
yeah,
of like the indie film companies. You know what I mean? Or the
yeah,
smaller film
exactly.
companies. They're taking
Yeah,
more risks.
exactly.
They're
Hmm.
giving people chances because it's not going to hurt them as much. They have less to lose. They don't have to put a lot of money into putting a movie in a theater. They just throw it up on their streaming site. So yeah, but
Yeah.
Tubi does a lot of that. We talk a lot about that with like found footage and how that's an entire universe of filmmakers who are getting an opportunity to show themselves, and it's the nature of the genre, and it's the nature of streaming right now.
Yeah. And these people who are taking a chance on horror, whether it's in the indie presses with horror authors or film, it's only benefiting them because people are eating it up. And I think it's because it's such a diverse genre. Like, it doesn't matter if I pick out 5 movies that I hate. It doesn't matter that I feel that way, because I guarantee you there is a group of people, probably a very large group of people, that loved 3 of the 5, 4 of the 5, all of them. Like, and that's kind of, I think what's happened is like, it's almost like they realize like, oh wait, people like this stuff. Like, we should, and it's been good.
I think the film industry is doing a better job of recognizing that people like those things. I would say traditional publishing is still not
It's still
there.
like, it's the
As
redheaded
far as horror. But that's why the indie scene, small publishers, small presses are thriving right now. And there's so many of them. And it's just it's so different than even 5 years ago at this point. Like, it's just really exciting.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about like the rest of your book tour, I wanted to talk about like kind of where you got started as far as like your experiences with horror and leading into writing horror, because you've been writing horror for years.
For a long time. Well, I mean, the Glowing, which is published, I think, is 2020. I had written that 10 years before.
Right.
So just for example, like, that was my first book. It took 10 years for that to get published. So, but before that, I mean, I would say the earliest stages of me, there's a couple of, I think, things I would say that I point to that got me interested in horror specifically. One was, I've talked about this, I've told this story before, but when I was in elementary school, there was, I will call it a spiral book rack in the middle school, or in the elementary school library, and it was at the time I think it was defined as like YA, which was like adult, basically. That was like the most inappropriate stuff they had in the elementary school library, and seriously, and on that shelf, it was ridiculous. Even as like a second grader, I thought it was, or as a third grader, I guess, is when this really happened. I took a horror book off of that shelf, and the librarian at the time basically said I couldn't read that and I wasn't old enough for that, which she probably was right. But what ended up happening was it made me like need to read all the scary stuff.
Yeah.
And I did. I read all the scary stuff. And then I would say secondarily to that, growing up, because I would just read anything I could find. My father had a bookshelf that was just filled with Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and so I just read all of that, and I just did. They were in my house, and I read everything. I also obviously read some of the earliest chapter books I read were Goosebumps. The first book I remember buying in a store, like a brand new book that I bought with my own money, was One Day at Horrorland by R.L. Stine, which was my favorite of his.
Cool
and
memory.
It's the cover, right? It was like that. So I was hooked. Then, and then also the artwork of the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Like, I always thought, like, I want to have books that look like that one day. So my books don't look exactly like that, but like, I mean, that stuff for me as a kid was where what drew me in. And then I would say also, so there's a lot, obviously. Also, as I said, I started picking out movies at the video rental store, and just sort of my love of horror blossomed from there.
Yeah.
Gremlins being one of the earliest horror movies I can recall watching.
Right. Yeah. So your love started with books, though, not film.
Books, then film. Yeah, because I
Then film.
probably was, I probably wouldn't have been allowed to watch as a third grader, like
Oh, right.
Friday
That's a
the
good point.
13th,
I didn't.
Nightmare on Elm
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
But I mean, not much further away from that age did I end
Right.
up watching those movies. I can remember being at I feel like a Halloween party in the third or fourth grade, and they had on Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Oh.
And kids like freaking out watching that, and I was just enthralled
Oh,
by
yeah.
that
Yeah.
movie. So
Yeah, because mine was the opposite. Mine was movies, and then books came a little bit later for me. But I didn't do the Stephen King path. Mine was Christopher Pike.
Oh, see, so I would say, realistically, I probably read all the R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and
Yeah.
L.J. Smith, who,
Yeah.
but I didn't read the Vampire Chronicles. I read a series called, it's because I have a copy here, the Forbidden Game series that she read, which drew me in. So I would say, R.L. Stine, Christopher Pike, L.J. Smith were the earliest horror novels that I read.
Yeah. I still of all the horror that I read early in my life, the ones that I remember the most is Christopher Pike.
Yeah.
I remember him.
I would say the first one that I read that was like beyond goosebumps, like scary. It was R.L. Stine wrote a book, YA, and it was called, I think it was called like The Hitchhiker or something like that. Or do you remember that one?
That does sound familiar. I think so. Yeah.
The Hitchhiker, it scared the.
But it was a lot more like not heavier, I guess, but
it was more grown up. Yeah.
More grown up.
It wasn't Goosebumps. Yeah.
It feels weird saying that being in my 30s, but yeah, more grown up.
More grown up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. And then there was another one. She's a female author. Her name. Amelia Atwater Rhodes. She wrote about like vampires and shapeshifters and.
Yep.
But it was done in it was YA. She had her first book published when she was 15.
Wow,
that was years and years and years ago. Now that was when I was.
Think about that even then. That's like,
I know. Like, and I don't know the story or any of that. I just remember like reading about her on the back of the first book of hers that I ever read, and and thinking, how could anyone at this age write something like this, and just being like blown away. But that was another one that I grew up with. That was big.
That generation of, middle grade to YA horror in the 90s, I definitely credit for not just me being a horror author, but probably me loving books so much. That's what got me to read and want to keep picking up books. Like, books became cool with R.L. Stine and with Christopher Pike. And so, man, that'd be cool to have that effect on somebody else. Not that I've written anything really for kids yet, but
I know what you mean. And to your point too, though, the other thing that kind of made it so interesting is because it wasn't like how it is now, where like we all read our different things and we all pay attention to different things. Like when Goosebumps was big, everyone was into it. Like there was the show, there was the movies. Which, by the way, when they did the movie version of The Mask, like,
and that came later on,
that came much later. But I'm just saying, like, it still was one of those things, though, where everybody was interested in it. It wasn't just like it didn't feel like a niche thing back then.
Yeah. We had the Trapper Keepers.
Oh my God! Bookmarks.
Oh yeah, everything.
It just didn't feel small. It felt like everybody was into it. It was kind of different.
I know. It's a unique period in literature. I don't know that there's anything like that, that's new. I mean, maybe I'm just really not in the picture, but like, I don't know. I don't know if there is. I'd love to know if there is, I guess.
Well, because you know what I'm noticing, and it's not, I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this is just a testament to how much is out there. There's like groups of people that all read the same stuff, but then there's like another group that reads all the same stuff. And then it's like you see it in these clusters, and then sometimes they bleed into one another. But everybody's out to get something kind of different from the experience. And the benefit to having so much access to indie horror now is that there is something
Oh my God.
genuinely for like everybody. I mean, it's, from
It's
all, and
unbelievable.
then there's like so many subgenres in that in and of itself because it's books and not films. Like there's literally something for everyone.
There's something for everyone. It's something from everyone of every different walk of life, and it's just a really cool
Yeah,
community. And yeah,
it is.
you're right. It does seem like there's just so much more to choose from. Like the list I keep of the books I want to read, it will be never ending forever. Like I'll never
I know. I
get
have
to
an
it. I would have
Amazon.
to not work to read everything, and then I
I
still would
know.
read everything.
I have an Amazon list, and that's not
So
even
do I. Yeah.
including the stuff I already own.
Oh, I know. Yep. So a lot of people were recently posting about like, you know, kind of looking down on people who buy books,
And then don't
but
read them.
don't read them, just put them on the shelf. Like, I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I do that all
No.
the time. You never know what you're going to want to read for your next book. At least that's how I feel. I don't know when I buy a book that it's the next book I want to read. It sometimes is,
Look, let
but
me
I
tell
like
you.
the feel of like walking over to a bookshelf and picking something out in my own house. That's very cool. And
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
there's like a whole other side of that too on the support side, because if I had a published book and someone bought it because they
That
wanted to be
yeah,
supportive or they were interested and it got put on a shelf, I still feel really proud about that, because that's the thing. Like I try to support like as much as I can, and when I get the books in, I always post about them. I
yeah,
talk about them when I'm reading them, but I'm a slow reader. I have a lot going on, and so I don't always have time. And it's become, reading used to be a habit for me. It used to be a habit to read. And so because I did it all the time, I could do it so fast. I could get through books. All of that does not exist anymore. But to me, even if it's on the shelf, that was an effort made to support whoever wrote that story. At some point, that
right.
was intriguing. I wanted to be a part of that. And now I have this piece of it with me when I get a chance to read it. And I think that as cheesy as that sounds, there's something really good to say about that too.
And I mean, if you buy someone's book,
Mhm.
you're basically saying, I want you to keep writing more. I'm supporting you,
Yeah.
and that's what the effect is. That's what will
Yeah.
happen. You buy
Yep.
someone's work, enough people buy their work, they're going to write more.
I
And
totally
so
agree.
that's a really cool way of
Yeah.
supporting. I don't necessarily think of myself an artist, but artists and authors and
Creating something.
creators. Yeah,
Creators, if you wanted to generalize in that way instead of, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I think it's just as meaningful, you know.
absolutely, super
Yeah.
meaningful. So please, you don't have to buy this book and read it right now. If you want to buy it and put it in yourself and let it
That's
sit
right.
there like a fine wine, and that is that is totally
Yeah.
acceptable. I do it myself.
No bookshelf shaming people. We don't do that here.
Not not here.
Not here.
No.
Cool. So what else do you have coming up for your promotional stuff, your book tour
So
stuff?
we've got the Odious Ghouls book tour of Doom, which is the first time I have sort of a hybrid, online and in person book tour. It starts with this launch tonight here on Voices from the Mausoleum, and it will end a month from now, the end of March,
Hmm.
um, at Scares That Care AuthorCon 2, which
Hmm.
is taking place in Williamsburg, Virginia. It's definitely going to be me stepping outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
For 3 days, I'm going to be having to like talk to people in person, and I am definitely an introvert, and like a
Yeah.
lot of authors, but I feel comforted knowing that knowing that a lot of horror authors and authors are introverts, and they're all going to be crammed into this one hotel for 3 days, with a lot of people who just love the genre. So that's really exciting. And yeah, I'll be doing readings there. I'll be signing a ton of books. I'll have a bunch of copies of this book. Odious Ghouls, actually the most of all the books I have. The highest number will be Odious Ghouls probably. But I'll have copies of all my books to sign as long as they last. And even be moderating a panel I just found out, dedicated to found footage.
Yay!
As a co-host of Found Footage Fridays, I consider myself an expert and a connoisseur of the genre. So, although
when you told me that, I was so
isn't it
excited for you. I'm
crazy?
so excited.
It's crazy, and I don't know like how I'll be as a moderator, but I
You're
can
gonna
talk.
do great.
It'll be fun. So, but there's a lot of other stuff, appearances on other shows and interviews and other things, that will happen over the course of this month, and giveaways and things like that. There'll be a chance to win a walk-on role in my next book, which, by the way, was a prize I gave away for Odious Ghouls. So there's somebody in this. Actually, there's somebody
I didn't know that.
in both Odious Ghouls and Malevolent Nevers. There are characters that were giveaway winners, and they're named real-life people. So, isn't that funny?
Who was the one for Malevolent Nevers?
The sheriff. Yeah. So that was a bigger role in Odious Ghouls. It's just like the shop owner at the beginning of the book.
That's
so it's
really cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to do it again for whatever the next book is.
Whatever.
I don't know. I'm not. I really am. Like similarly to Malevolent Nevers, I have to get it out in the world first, and
I understand that.
Do a little bit of marketing, and I feel like I can't. I'm the world's worst multitasker, so I cannot really be. I'm not good at marketing a book and writing one at the same time. So I probably will.
I can see that. Yeah.
Do this for a while, a few months or more, and then get working on the next one. So
be good.
Really excited about that.
So I thought about this as we were talking. I didn't mention that I was going to ask you this before, but I wanted to ask you because I'm thinking, because I was talking about like relating to characters and thinking some characters are funny or just being, like I said, relatable.
Yeah.
Do you have a character in Odious Ghouls that you relate to, or one that you feel has like pieces of yourself in?
I mean, not exactly. There's definitely a character in one of my books who is probably the closest to me as a person, but that would be in The Glowing. There's a teacher in The Glowing, and I'm an educator, and I think there's elements. He's not me, but there's elements of me in him. But in this book, not really.
No.
There's this old guy in this book. His name is Skip, and
that's who I was gonna say was
me. Kind of a curmudgeon and a tough guy. And I'm not a tough guy. I'm not saying that, but like I'm definitely like rough around the edges sometimes, and direct and blunt. So, but I would say he's not exactly me. Like none of them are exactly.
He's the one that I related to the most.
Yeah.
Just because of how he is, his outlook, the things he thinks and says, especially when he first meets everybody in the beginning. Yeah. Like it's just one of those things where I was like, it's like the things he's thinking, and he's just like.
I mean, so no doubt people are going to read and be like, okay, why would this old guy really be doing this? And I think there are moments like that in all my books where you're like, why would they be doing that? I am really a fan of suspending disbelief and not asking a ton of questions when you read a book. That's what I sort of mean.
There's a reason, or do you mean like people think that it's
not a reason? No, but I mean like, sure, you could take my books or any book and you could question things and break them down, but you could also just enjoy the book and just, you know what I mean? Just like
I didn't even question that. I just. You know what I mean? I was listening or listening. I was reading and getting invested in the story. I wasn't trying to pick it apart or say anything.
But even if people do, that's fine. I
liked him. He was, yeah, I thought he was the
I
most relatable for me.
there are lovable curmudgeons in all of my books. That, different places. So if you really look, I don't know why it's a thing, but
You're like, I don't know why.
definitely in the first Glowing, and then in
Mhm.
Malevolent Nevers, and in this
Yep.
book. So
Yeah.
Odious Ghouls. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, any other thoughts, feelings, hopes, dreams, wishes?
I'm just really grateful that you had me on the show today, and this is the official launch. So I want to everybody watching, please go, and this is a really cool looking book. Put it on your bookshelf, save it for a
I'll show it
time, and
again.
show it again. There it is. Artwork by the amazing Gemma Moore. This is, again, Odious Ghouls. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, and in paperback. And I really can't wait to hear what you think. It means a lot every single time someone buys one of my books, and I find out about it somehow. They take a picture of it, they leave a review, whatever. Maybe they never say anything after they buy it, but they told me they bought a copy.
Right.
It's like, I can't explain. Every single time it gets me, and I'm surprised anyone would want to read one of my books. Never mind a bunch of people, strangers. So please give it a read. I think you'll have fun with it, and that's what I want. I want you to have fun with it.
Yeah, I think people will. I had a really great time reading it, and I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to do so, because I was excited after talking about some of the themes with you. I was like amped to see. And then when you asked about me reading it early, I was like, oh my God, like that made my year. I was so pumped about it. And no, it was. I love that it's still very Tom, but it is outside of the box of the other things that you have done. Not that those are in the box, but you know what I mean. Just it is different.
No. It's very different.
I think people are going to really love this. It's going to be really fun for people.
If you do like it, well, if you do or you don't, if you read it and you like it or you hate it, leave a review. Let me know. I would love to hear what you think.
Yeah. Well, that's our conversation on Odious Ghouls. I'm going to put the link for where you can buy this, obviously, in the description for this episode. And I'll be sharing about it and stuff. And when I get my copy, I'll be posting about it and all that stuff, because I want a physical one too to add to my collection.
This is smaller, shorter than Malevolent Nevers 2. It's a faster read. So
it killed me when I was like reading it. I started reading it, and then when I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed and I'll have to finish, I'll have to work on it some more tomorrow to read it. And then I was like, I wasn't paying attention because it was digital. So I was like, just going through, and then I realized that like I didn't have that much left. I was like, dang, it moves.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah, in a good way. I think it's good.
I think so.
Cool. Well, make sure you guys check out Odious Ghouls. Go follow Tom if you're not. His links will also be in the description for this episode, as always. And you can always see more of him on Found Footage Fridays. And yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Have a good rest of your week coming up, and we will see you on Friday.
We'll see you Friday. Thanks, Angel, and thanks everybody else. See you soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.